This month is all about high-speed sync and how useful it is on location in ambient situations where you want to introduce fill flash. It really gives you the best of both worlds, allowing you to create images like the ones that you see here, where we have a nice mix between the background, ambient lit scene, and we also have a nice mix with the flash that's being used as well. So you got a good balance between the two, and we're able to shoot with wide apertures. Okay, you'll notice that the background on these images is very soft, and that creates a really nice level of separation between the background and the subject, and that's really what we want. Absent high-speed sync, we really don't have that because we have to shoot with narrow apertures. Because we can't use fast shutter speeds. The beauty of high-speed sync is it allows us to use shutter speeds that go beyond the maximum flash sync speed of our cameras, which are typically around 1/200th of a second. And we'll walk through it and you'll see the different effects. You'll see how the background has a lot of noise and distracting elements. It's very much in focus when you have to stop way down by virtue of using slow shutter speeds at 1/200th of a second and below. So let's take a look at it. Again, this is our benchmark. This is kind of where we want to end up, the three images that you see here, but I'll walk you through how we got there. So the first thing that you want to do is establish good ambient exposure, and I do that without any flash units turned on. It just kind of alleviates all of the variables, and you really don't know where you are if you throw everything into the mix at first. So I kind of figure out where I want to be. Typically I know that I want a nice soft background. Here you'll see the settings are f2.8, 1/1600th of a second at 100 ISO. Now I needed, given the existing ambient light conditions, they dictated that if I wanted to be at 2.8, I was at my lowest ISO, that if I wanted to shoot wide open at f2.8, I had to use a fast shutter speed. I had to be at 1/1600th of a second in order to keep the exposure balanced. And if you refer to the article, it mentions the exposure triangle, and that's basically everything has to be in balance. You have to make up the difference with one setting if you change the difference, if you change the value of another setting. So that's what that's all about. All right. So the next step is to introduce flash. Now, once I introduce the flash, I needed to stop way down in order to balance the exposure. So here I am at f11 at 1/200th of a second, because that's the maximum flash sync speed of the camera. That's the fastest sync speed that I could use without high-speed sync. And I'm at 100 ISO. And you can see here that while the exposure is balanced, while I have a nice balance between the foreground subject and the background is really not too pleasing. It's really distracting and noisy. We've got a lot of detail here that I just, is not really serving the image. There's not a good degree of separation between the subject and the background as we saw in the ambient only shot. So what I want to do is change that up, and high-speed sync will allow me to do that. So let's take a look at that. All right, so what I want to do is I want to use a fast shutter speed in order that I can open up my f-stop, but I can open up my aperture. So here, again, and we're not using high-speed sync at this point, I've changed my aperture to f2.8, back to f2.8, which is what I want, at 1/1600th of a second. That's going to give me a nice balance of light. I've increased my ISO a little bit just to give me a little bit more flexibility. But you can see here, at that shutter speed, without using high-speed sync, this is the effect that I'm going to get. I'm going to get a black band of underexposed area on the exposure, because what's happening is the front and rear curtains in the camera are moving together too quickly across the surface of the sensor in the camera and just catching a little bit of the flash, not all of it. So that's what's happening. We're getting this really underexposed area. I have a little animation to make this a little bit more clear. So let's just jump over to the animation for a minute and we can take a look at it. So we've got three different illustrations of the inside of the camera, the curtains, the front and rear curtains at different shutter speeds and how they interact during an exposure. Okay, so we've got the first one is 1/200th of a second, which is our maximum flash sync speed. The second one is above our sync speed, 1/500th of a second, and the third one is 1/1000th of a second, which is very much faster. Okay, so I'm going to begin the animation. I can kind of talk through it. All right, so as you see here in the 1/200th of a second, which again is within our flash sync speed, maximum sync speed, you can see here that the entire sensor is exposed during when the flash goes off, when the exposure is made. Okay, now when we look at 1/500th of a second, again, which is above our maximum flash sync speed, you can see here that this front and rear curtain in the camera start to travel together. The rear curtain does not wait until the first curtain has finished moving across the sensor in order to start moving behind it. All right, and that's what accounts for that area of underexposed image on an exposure. That's because the entire sensor has not been completely uncovered during the exposure, and that's only accentuated as you increase the shutter speed. Here you'll see it at 1/1000th of a second. That slit that is created by the front and rear curtain moving across the sensor becomes much smaller, much more narrow, the higher that you get with your shutter speed. And that's what high-speed sync is all about. It does away with the need, with that being a problem, because what it does is, let's say if you look at the 1/500th of a second illustration or animation, what happens during the exposure is a rapid burst of flashes is fired continuously during the entire time that the curtain is moving across the sensor. So as that curtain is moving, it's flash, 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 flash the entire time, and it's lighting up the entire sensor as that curtain moves across it. Okay, so that's what high-speed sync gets you. It gets you a complete even exposure with a really fast shutter speed, and that's the beauty of high-speed sync. So let's jump back over to our slides and walk through the rest of it. All right. So high-speed sync permits the use of wide apertures and shutter speeds above 1/200th of a second. So here you see that simply by using high-speed sync, now I'm able to use the f-stop that I want, that 2-point, I'm able to get that beautiful soft background. I'm able to do that because I'm able to use a shutter speed of 1/1600th of a second at ISO 400. Right? And the ISO is going to allow you to season to taste. I found I got a little bit more output from my flash when I was using 400, so that's the reason that I boosted it. All right. Let's take a look at the various settings. So here again, I just want to walk you through the steps that you can take, or that I took. So I started out at f11 at 1/200th of a second at ISO 400, and again, just to put a finer point on it, you can see here that we've got that really nasty background. It's got a lot of detail, and I just don't want that in this particular shot. So by implementing high-speed sync, switching to high-speed sync mode, I am able to completely invert the relationship between aperture and shutter speed by 4 stops, and we'll cover this in a minute. And I'm able to use f2.8 at 3200th of a second at ISO 400, right? So you can see the exposures are exactly the same. The only thing that's changed is I've been able to blur out the background. That's the beauty of high-speed sync. Now, if I wanted something more moody and dramatic, I can really accentuate that reduction in ambient light by increasing my shutter speed to 1/8000th of a second, and that's about as high as you can go, okay, with high-speed sync. But it still gets you quite a bit of drama in here. You can see I'm really able to hold the sky here and get some great detail there. I'm able to create kind of a day for night look. This is shot, at basically around 2 in the afternoon. And you can see the variety of light that we can create here. We can go from something that's got a very natural balance here and here to something that is much more moody, which I would say is this image here. All right. So let's take a look at the math behind what's happening here. And don't be scared by math, guys. This is really pretty simple stuff. But basically, high-speed sync allows you to invert the relationship between aperture and shutter speed when using flash. In this case, I'm opening up my aperture by 4 stops. So let's look at these images here. I'm using, on the one on the left is f11 at 1/200th of a second at ISO 400. And the one on the right is f28. So the difference between f28 and f11 is 4 stops. And the difference between 1/200th of a second and 1/3200th of a second is, again, 4 stops. So if we look at it over here, we see that if we look at it right here and here, we'll see that from f11 to f8 is 1 stop. From f8 to f5.6 is 2 stops. 5.6 to 4, 3 stops. 4.5 to 2.8 is 4 stops. So I've opened up. I'm increasing the light in this exposure by 4 stops. So I need to make up the difference for that. Because again, we need to keep that exposure in balance, right? We just added 4 stops of light. We've got all this light spilling into the exposure. So I need to use my shutter speed in order to make up the difference. And high speed sync lets me do that. I'm able to take the exposure, the shutter speed rather, from 1/200th of a second to 1/400, which is a stop. From 400 to 800, that's another stop. 800 to 1600, that's a third stop. And finally, 1600 to 3200, that's 4 stops. And you can see here I went even higher before to create a really dramatic kind of day for night, moody, dark look. Right? So that's about as complex as it gets. So one of the other interesting things is that shutter speed freezes action when you're using high-speed sync, and that's very different than typically the way flash works. Typically, it's flash that freezes the action because of flash duration. So you're counting on the burst of the flash to freeze action. But with high-speed sync, what's happening is your flash is almost behaving like a constant light source. It's, again, sending out multiple bursts of light during the entire length of the exposure. So essentially it's becoming a constant light. And in this instance, in this rare instance, your shutter speed is really what is going to freeze the action when you're using flash, only in high speed sync. All other times, flash freezes action. All right, and the benefit being here that I'm able to, again, use those, have a really nice wide aperture, get a blurred background. I'm able to light on location in ambient situations, introduce fill flash, and yet I can freeze action as well. All right. So you've seen basically we can take it from any direction that we want. We've got this really nice balanced look that we can create, and again, that's going to be dictated by how much ambient light I'm allowing in by virtue of the shutter speed that I'm using. Here is 1/1600th of a second at f2.8, or I can go for something much more dramatic, and again, this is 1/3200th of a second. Or I think this was 1/8000th of a second, excuse me, 1/8000th of a second, the highest I can go. And it's giving me this really dark, moody look. The sky is really popping. It's great. I love this look, and something that I use often, but it's whatever you want it to be, okay? So again, just to put a finer point on it, here is where we started off. This is our ambient light only exposure, and you can see here that I've got the background nice and blurred, but I really don't have the quality of light that I want on the subject. Shadows are harsh. It's not really what I'm going for. I'm able to then turn on my flash, but again, now I have had to stop down the lens in order to keep everything in balance. This also is not what I want. And then by using high-speed sync, I'm able to achieve this kind of look, which to my eye is much more pleasing and much more of the kind of look that I'm going for. So that's going to wrap it up for this month. That's high speed sync, guys. I encourage you to get out there and try it. If you have questions, by all means, hit me up on Facebook, on the Shutterfest website, Shutterfest Facebook page, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can for you. All the best. We'll see you guys next month. Until then, this has been Michael Corsentino for Shutter Magazine.